Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Spiritually Speaking. I have another beautiful guest with me today. This is Lisa. Thank you, Lisa, for coming on the show today. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. After our conversation last week, I've been looking forward to this all week, I have to say.
Oh, yay. That's so good. I'm so glad. It's been a really fun day, and we were talking about how our days have been going before we got on here today. So I hope everyone else has been having a good day today. I know that it won't be this day when we air this, but hopefully they'll be having a good day the day that they're listening because it's been kind of an interesting day today energetically for me, but it's been good. It's all good. Like I feel like this just magic. I feel like magic is afoot, is how I said it to a friend of mine earlier. So,
Yeah, you know what? I can absolutely agree with that. Today has just been just a very heart-centered day, I think is a good way to put it too. Just connections that are coming up, and just being so grateful to have met, you and so many of the others through this Side Chicks Collective has been it's been so rewarding. I've only been there for a couple of weeks and it's already just been so rewarding. And um, to be honest, through a good portion of this summer, I was, sitting around and I was getting completely I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm
mhm.
not, there's no inspiration, there's no love behind it anymore. But becoming part of this collective has really shifted all those perspectives in a matter of, honestly, within about 48 hours of joining my whole perspective on everything had changed.
Wow.
And just reminding me why I do this work,
Mm.
why I love this work, and that, I can do it, but I don't have to burn myself out doing it either.
Absolutely not. Yeah, boundaries, those boundaries that a lot of people don't even realize they need to have in place. And it's especially, well, I shouldn't say especially, it's equally as important to have those energetic boundaries as it is to have those physical boundaries, So I'm really glad you brought that up because that's a great thing that we need to have in place.
Absolutely. I actually have an entire energetic hygiene maintenance routine that I do multiple times a day, depending on how many clients I'm working with. But even on days when I'm not working with clients, morning and night, I do this routine. And I highly encourage people to get a routine. I even created a little mini course for it recently because so many people are like, well, how do I keep negative energy out? Well, there's lots of different ways of doing that, but even when you've been doing this for a long time, working with energy and you've done your shadow work and your own energies, in a good place,
Yeah.
there's still going to be that psychic interference out there.
Mhm.
There's so much stuff floating around in the ether that, you never know what you're going to encounter. And so that's always been one of the first things I teach people, because I want them to understand like how empowering it is to be in your own energy as an
Yeah.
empath or as a spiritual sensitive, and not be constantly feeling everyone else's everything.
Yeah. Yeah. It is really tough for people who, well, it's really tough when you're not aware and you don't know how to implement the strategies that you need to implement to get yourself in a space that's a little more, peaceful, I guess is a good word to use right there. So for people who have
Absolutely.
never in their lives heard the term energetic hygiene, would you explain to them what that means?
For sure, for sure. So we are an energy body, right? Some people call it the aura, some people call it your energy. It just depends on, where you come from with that. But when we are out in everyday life, we pick up psychic information. A lot of that does go into the solar plexus, which is that the yellow chakra that's at your stomach. But a lot of it will just attach itself, sorry, in various places on your energy. And a lot of empaths especially experience that whole like I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. Then all of a sudden I feel angry or
Mm,
sad or something for no reason. And that is because they have come in contact with someone's energy. And because a lot of us come from that place of, having to learn to read the room and the people pleasing and all of that, we have a tendency to absorb that
yeah.
until we start learning these things about taking care of ourselves. And one of those things is being able to release or let go of the energy that just doesn't belong to you.
Mhm.
And it's really important to learn how to do that. It's a big step on your healing journey as well, because empaths also have a tendency to own other people's
Oh,
problems.
yes,
They
we
want to
do.
fix them for them. And that's another reason why that energy can get absorbed. And sometimes that can get really, really overwhelming.
Mhm.
So one of the things I do teach people when we are starting, if they're, coaching with me or any of that kind of stuff, please learn how to take care of your energy. And here's a resource that I've created for empaths for that, because the more you can learn to stand in your own energy, the more you can kind of go, hey, you know what? It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to set energetic boundaries. It's okay to say no. It's okay to, do something that, maybe it does feel selfish to me, but it's taking care of me. It's nourishing
Yeah.
me. It's me loving myself. And
Mhm.
that's really what all energy work and healing is about, is coming back to that journey of learning how to love and empower yourself in your life. Because when you do that, it spreads out to all the other areas of your life anyway.
Yes. Yes. And that's why it bugs me when people say that it is selfish when you set those boundaries, because I don't look at it that way at all. Because if I'm my best self inside of my boundaries, then that's what I get to give to others. Whereas if I have these lackadaisical boundaries where I'm letting all this crap just deplete my energy and keep me grouchy and in that low vibration, then that's what I'm putting out to other people. I don't prefer to do that. So I feel like in that
Exactly.
way, it's not selfish, because if we take care of ourselves, then we get to give our best self to other people. And that to me is a beautiful
Absolutely.
thing.
Absolutely. I remember, a few years ago when I was really learning about boundaries and learning about, how I can do that. I had set this boundary with my husband. If my office door is closed, please don't come in. And it took us a couple of weeks for him to realize that it wasn't a personal attack on him
Right.
when I closed the door. It was, I have work I need to get done, or I have recording I need to get done, or something that I don't want to be interrupted. And when we finally sat down again and had about the fourth conversation, I said, listen, I know sometimes you don't always feel that my work is as important as yours. Because, when in relationships, sometimes, the other person can kind of feel your contributions aren't as valuable until they start seeing where you're actually contributing. And these were
Yep.
things we had to work on in our relationship. And so I sat him down and I said this, and finally I just said, if you want me to make more contributions to the family, you need to let me have this space.
Mhm.
And as soon as we, as soon as that kind of understood in his head that it wasn't personal, that it was just simply, I need a space to work and I don't always want to be interrupted, it went away.
Yeah.
He just, he stepped back and he went, oh, okay, I can respect that boundary. And
Yeah.
interestingly enough, in me doing that, it's helped him learn how to set boundaries too. And not just with
Oh,
me, but
mhm.
with his family,
Yeah.
and with his work and things like that. So it's really about being that example for the
Mm.
people in our lives, not saying, you have to do this way, but
Right.
this is the way I do things.
Right.
Just watch.
Yeah.
And
And we can support
it
each
really
other in
does.
that way. It's a mutual
It,
thing. It's not, I need it to be this way. It's that for the good of all, it would be
yes,
preferable if it could be this way. And then we all get to work in a cohesive synergy instead of having this push-pull going on. And it is different
exactly.
when you work at home. I mean, that is, even I'm sure I know I have found it to be challenging someday because I'm at home. So it's like you have a tendency to get distracted by the day-to-day goings on in your home, and you find yourself like halfway through the day and not having done anything yet. So being able to set those boundaries is super important for everyone, especially
Yeah,
ourselves.
exactly. And I have set boundaries with that as well. You know, there's certain times of day where I say, okay, I'm going to focus on my work. And there's certain times of day where I say, okay, I'm going to focus on home. And it makes a big difference. I actually I did a little bit of research into this because I was curious how other, creators and self-employed people were handling this. And a few of the creators that I watched were actually like, they would get up and have their coffee and do whatever. But if they weren't going to be on camera that day, they weren't even getting dressed.
Yeah,
And I thought, that doesn't work for me. I have to make that transition from, home to work to back again. So how can I incorporate that? So every morning I get up and have my breakfast and coffee, and then I have my shower and I get dressed, and then I get on with my day. I don't, I always make sure I get dressed because that for me is signaling to my mind we're making that transition.
right,
And, as someone who is highly sensitive, those routines are incredibly important because our brains only believe what's true and our brains only believe what we feed it. So the
it's
more we,
true.
work on creating those routines for ourselves, the more we're going to be able to be more productive and actually get things done.
Yeah, yeah. And our energy being in that better space like that, that's what brings people to us and allows us to share the knowledge and help people like we do. So I'm so glad you brought that up. It's a beautiful thing.
Thank
Yay.
you. Thank you. It really is important to me, and it also goes hand in hand with self-care. I mean, how many years have us as spiritual practitioners sat here going, self-care is not wine and bubble baths, friends.
Right.
It's so much more than that. Oh, and like I said, I have been doing this work for 15 years. So, I've seen a huge shift in how people, perceive that. But that is the one thing still that the majority of mainstream women, I'm going to have my glass of wine and my bubble bath on Friday night, and that's my self-care. Well, where are you checking in with yourself emotionally,
Right.
physically, spiritually, mentally? Where are your practices to help your body get regulated? Your vagus nerve, your yogas, your breath work, all of those kinds of things. And I'm not saying that, every modality and every piece is for every single person.
Right.
You got to explore it, you know.
Exactly.
You got to try things. You got to look at things. What's catching your interest right now? And I always say if it doesn't feel good, don't do it.
Yeah.
So for me, that was a big thing, was putting down the substances. That was a big thing. Um, when I started my journey, I was just coming out of, I wouldn't necessarily call it an alcohol addiction, but I was certainly at a point in my life where I would go to work and I would be looking forward to getting home to have that first sip of alcohol.
Yeah.
Um, and it wasn't long after I had stopped that, and the doctor said, "Oh, here's some pills, some antidepressants." Not that I think it's a horrible thing or anything like that. I just feel like it's something that people maybe need to take a step back and really look at what's going on inside, as
Mhm.
opposed to trying to find an external fix for those symptoms.
Right.
And I went to my first energy healing, and this is going back 2008, 2009, somewhere in there. Like, I don't even remember now. But it was the start of something that I had no idea what I was stepping into. I have to say that that completely changed my life. I had always been open to, metaphysical concepts. My mom took me to my first metaphysical shop when I was 16 years old. And it was a
So
very interesting
cool.
experience. There was a whole rack of tarot decks, and I said, Mom, that's what I want to get, one of those. And I pointed right at the one I wanted. I remember the box was purple. That's all I remember about it now. 30 years later. Uh, but she said, no, it's not time for that yet. And I always kind of held on to that in the back of my mind because my mom was also very highly psychic.
Hmm.
And so I do know that it does kind of come through the bloodlines, but also it's part of what I chose with my soul contract.
Right.
And she was like, just keep looking around. And there was this entire wall of dream catchers. I didn't even know what they were. I just knew they were pretty. And there was one in particular on that wall. And it was like, you need to take me home with you. And I just said to mom, I said, Mom, I think that one just yelled at me. And she was like, what? She's like, all right, we'll get that one. And that was my first like real kind of psychic experience. Come to find out many years later, there was a lot of really low vibrational energy in my mom's home. And I
Hmm.
didn't understand what I was dealing with. And so it was actually a protection that my ancestors were like, hey, this protection, you need it right now. And so I
Right.
hung it up and I really don't completely understand what happened to this day because
Mm.
I was too young to understand. And I was
Right.
very naive. I was very naive as a kid because my parents sheltered me. They didn't want me to know what was going on in the world.
Yep.
So yeah, that's kind of where my journey started. And I mean, I could go back even further. When I was 12, I saw my first spirit. Um, it was a very interesting experience. The way our house was set up, you'd go up the stairs and there was 4 bedrooms at each corner and there's a hallway. And I was standing at this end and the only lights on was the one in my bedroom, which was at the far end of the hall. And I saw this woman standing there. I could see her shadow. And
Yeah.
I was like, what's going on there? And I could very well tell she was an elderly woman. And so I described her. She had short hair that was kind of sticking out all over. She was wearing a shawl. And I described her to my stepmom. And my stepmom said, well, I don't believe in ghosts, but my grandmother died in that room.
Wow.
And I went,
And was that
oh,
description
okay.
accurate to the grandmother?
She showed me a picture. It absolutely was. It was
Holy crap, that's so
exactly the person
cool.
I saw.
That's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So yeah, I've had this connection my entire life. And um, it took me a long time to understand what it was that I was needing to do with it to share with the world.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of people don't understand the amount of transformation that like light workers came here to do this time.
Mhm.
Um, we are being asked, and it's because we're going through this massive consciousness expansion that they're calling ascension.
Yeah.
We're being asked to look at every trauma and karma in this life, every trauma and karma in our past lives, as well as our generational lines. And that adds up.
Yes, it
That
does.
really adds up. And when the world kind of blew up in 2020, I always kind of joke that that's what happened because it's really what it felt like.
Yeah.
um, I was kind of shoved down the rabbit hole and basically told, you are going to address this stuff now. And I probably did like the most deep shadow work through 2021 and early 2022. Then in 2022, I got the bright idea that I wanted to activate my highest timeline. And for people who don't know, timelines are basically possibilities based on choices. So I said, well, I want to enact the highest thing that I came here to do. 100% do not recommend.
Be careful what you wish for, right?
That
I
is
mean,
exactly it.
it's
That is exactly it. And it put me right back into a whole other dark night of the soul and a whole another year of deep shadow work.
Mhm.
And I can even say, like, to this day, there are still things occasionally, but having the self-awareness to
That's it.
step into it and go, okay, I don't need to be jealous of that person, or I don't need to be angry at that person. I need to look inside myself and say, hey, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And that has been the most freeing thing on my journey, is to be able to understand that every time you have one of those emotions, there's probably something going on in here.
Oh, yeah. It's 100% the magic ingredient for everything. It really is to be able to just go in and take a look. And I like to ask, what is this teaching me? What is this teaching me about life? What is this teaching me about this situation? What is this teaching me about myself? Because
Yes.
that at the end of the day is the core of everything, is your own soul evolution, because that's how you get to transform. Do you find, because this is such a big topic. I mean, like we talk about it like it's like just, but it's huge. It's like this huge,
Mhm.
expansive topic. Do you find that you experience physical symptoms associated with these? I call them energy integrations now, because that's what it feels like to me. So,
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It really depends. Um, when I was going through a couple of years ago, when I was going through a really intense time with money stories and working on how I related to money and how it flowed through my life, I spent 6 weeks dealing with sciatic pain because of that.
mhm,
And it took me those 6 weeks of really working on the emotions behind it. And this was something I had literally worked on this every single day for like 6 weeks because these weren't just my money stories. They weren't just the ones that I had grown up with. They were the generational ones.
yeah,
And my own mother can't was she's indigenous and she came from a highly abusive family because they didn't know any better. When she was 2 or 3-ish, was picked up in what they call the 60s scoop from the residential schools. And my Canadian friends will know it was not a nice time. These though, even though they didn't find bodies like they said they did, there was still a lot of behavior that went on that just completely eroded any sense of self, any sense of self-esteem that these kids would have had, any self-worth on any level. And so the generational part of that went really, really deep. And it's taken me a long time to work through that bit. And so, yeah, the sciatic pain was real. Another thing that I notice, if I encounter, I think is the word, yes, encounter a lot of like psychic interference. So, like the energies that are out there,
right,
I will have digestive issues, I'll have heartburn, I'll have an upset stomach, all of those things. So, I know immediately I need to pull out my tools and I need to clear this energy because I don't like that.
right.
I did spend a good portion of my late teens, early 20s with ulcers because I was an empath and had no idea what I was dealing with.
Yeah,
And it took years to work through that because I had no idea,
yeah.
none whatsoever.
It's amazing how it
So,
it really can impact us like that. I've done some research, which I mean, you hear about that all of this energetic stuff has its home in different parts of our body. And if you research into that, a lot of times these medical conditions that we think we have, once we do the research and find out that it's actually an energetic thing, just the knowing of that and being able to be consciously aware of it and allow that integration to happen without us freaking out about it, it actually resolves itself quite quickly. At least that's been my
absolutely,
experience.
absolutely. Yeah. I will say, Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life, that's the one that changed everything, right?
Yeah.
Um, she literally flat out said, if you're feeling this, this is the emotion you need to work on. And she was right.
Yeah.
She absolutely was right. Um, and I know for me, one of the things that I was dealing with too for a while was my liver wasn't doing what I needed it to. Well, of course, because I was storing anger
Right.
over and over and over. And when I started working through the anger, all of a sudden, all of the other systems associated with the liver were getting better. And interestingly enough, I started taking milk thistle because it's really good for your liver to help keep it clear and so you can continue to methylate and release the things that you don't need in your body. And I had a time period where I didn't get it, probably of about 2 weeks. And at the end of those 2 weeks, boy, was I angry again.
Yeah.
I was. I was quite shocked actually when I kind of put two and two together. And so I said, okay, this weekend when we go to the store, I need to pick up some milk thistle because I need to take this clearly. It also helps to understand, the meridians in the body and how those work. And, and it does have some of that basis in Chinese medicine where they understand, what flows where.
Hmm.
But I highly recommend getting very in tune with your body because
Yeah.
it will tell you things that you had no idea. A lot of the reasons that a lot of women have gynecological problems is because they're stuffing their emotions down in there.
Yeah.
It's not hereditary. Don't get me wrong, there are environmental factors.
Sure.
Um, you'll find me to be the first one to say, like, don't get on birth control to these young girls because I'm still dealing with the consequences of being on it for a long time. Because, as a Gen Xer, everybody in my generation, they were told, take birth control, you'll be fine.
Hmm.
No, no, you won't. But I will say, I am really working with natural ways to do this because I've seen far too many of my counterparts go through hysterectomies and ablations and have nothing but problems. And I don't want that for myself. And so I'm really working on making friends with that cycle. That because that's a really important part of just um, as a woman in connecting with that feminine energy.
Hmm.
We're told from the time we're teenagers, your cycle's bad, it's awful, it's
Yeah.
weird. Don't tell anybody you've got
It's
it.
the
Don't, you know,
curse.
it's the curse.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And so that's a big part of, healing the feminine collective as a whole is, making friends with that cycle again, teaching our daughters that it's safe and natural and good for you because it is one of the ways that our bodies releases toxins as well as women. And so that I am kind of a proponent of this kind of education, especially for younger girls, because here I am, a woman in my full-blown perimenopause going, I wish I hadn't done certain things to my body because now I'm dealing with the consequences of them. And the biggest one being on and off birth control from the time I was 18 until I was almost 40.
Right. Yeah. I did the birth control thing too, and until I had my tubes tied when I was 22 and completely pissed off my ex-husband's mother. She thought I was not old enough to make that choice. And I was like, well, guess what? I have two kids already. I'm not having another one. I knew it was time and I was okay with that. And that's the choice I made. So I wasn't on birth control after that point. So but, I do realize that tubal ligation is not an option for a lot of people for whatever reason, from finances to religious reasons or whatever. So that was my personal choice. But so I didn't have the long term of being on it like you did. So, but it's crazy how that kind of stuff affects our bodies.
It does. It affects our bodies, but it also affects our connections when we are working on our healing, when we're working on our energy, all of those things. The minute I made the decision that I wasn't going to listen to the gynecologist who told me that, oh, just stay on it till you're done menopause.
Oh, wow.
Really? Yeah, no, I will, I will never recommend that for anyone. I'm very, very grateful. I had the opportunity to meet a wonderful um, family who the two sisters uh, have a wellness clinic in a city near where I live, and they practice something called biofeedback.
Hmm.
Um, it, not everybody's going to know what that is, but it's basically they hook you up to this machine that can read your body. Uh, Essentially, it's reading the electrical impulses from your body,
Yeah.
and it's very accurate in letting you know where things are going wrong and where you can take corrective actions. And they helped set me on a really great path towards that physical healing. And so many spiritual practitioners get caught up in the notion of, like I have to master the crown chakra, I have to master the spiritual aspects of all of it.
Right.
And please don't get me wrong, that is absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
But until you make peace with the physical body and with your heart, you are never going to work through this ascension. Um, we all are going to be pushed to master the root, being here, being present, being physical, the heart, unconditional love, and then the crown. It has absolutely nothing to do with being some master of spiritual concepts and any of that. It has to do with mastering being human.
You know what? It's so
And
funny you said that. And I don't mean funny, haha. I mean like interesting because I love spirit. Like I just love spirit because I actually just started another video series on my YouTube channel with just me. And it's called Dee's Mindful Monday Musings. And my first topic of discussion was humanness and how we need to make friends with our physical bodies and some of the things that I went through in my own journey, learning to be okay in my humanness, making friends with my human experience because some of us are more grounded, earthly, earth spirit, earth energy beings, and we don't have to think about that as much, because we're just kind of that our soul contract is that we're kind of created that way and we have that connection, and that's great. And I love that. However, I'm not one of those people. And I've always been this, I'm out here in the stratosphere. Why can't I just fly around in the stars kind of person? Because that's what I would want to do, Screw this being attached to the earth crap. I want to go play, you know? So I had to make that journey through that humanness. And it is a huge, huge journey to I don't want to say it like it's huge in that it's difficult, although it can be more for some people than others, and I get that. But I mean huge as in important and impactful to to come to terms with our humanness and make friends with it. That's how I put it. Make friends with it.
I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah, it absolutely is. And I mean, like when I started my journey, that's what I thought. I thought, it's all about the being out in the ether and look at how cool I am, look how spiritual I am. And the more I'm on this path, the more I just want to say, like, you need to be friends with your human part.
Yeah.
You need to be friends with all of it.
Mhm.
And I literally went through this really strange period in I think it was 2022, um, where I had to really kind of reconcile, okay, the physical, the spiritual, okay, but they're so separate. And then it was like this slow integration process of realizing I can live all of it at once.
Oh, and we have
And
to. Because we're not separate. It's not separate because if our spirit body wasn't in our human body would die.
exactly.
It would die. So because that's the factual way it is, we must live an integrated life of human and spirit. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why I always kind of joke, yes, we have these spiritual practices that help us, connect to something greater than ourselves. But at the end of the day, yes, still got to do the laundry and clean the cat litter?
yeah, that's right.
So it's really about finding practical ways to integrate that into our lives.
Mhm.
And, I'm the one I have a Pisces stellium in my birth chart. So basically, what that means for people who don't know, you have three or more planets with the same astrological placement. So my sun, my moon, my Mercury, and my Venus, all major influences are in Pisces. And then my rising sign comes along in Scorpio, which is another major influence for people who don't know. And then your midhaven, which is also another major influence, is in Virgo. So I have this crazy, imaginative, floaty side that is like, no, we need to stay here on Earth.
Straighten that picture up. It's crooked.
Exactly, exactly. And partly too, because of the way I was brought up, because I did want to just kind of float around in the clouds and do all of that stuff. And my family was very much about, stop daydreaming, get your head out of the clouds. You got to be practical. You got to do this, 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 and this. And I lived their way of life. And I was like, I don't like this. I got to find my own way. And my
Yeah.
own way is finding the balance between the two.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important for people to remember, especially people who are highly sensitive. Because, you hear that word, HSP or empath or neurodivergent or autistic. They're thrown around so easily,
Yes.
and there's a lot of self-diagnosis going on. And
Hmm.
don't get me wrong, psychology is evolving and it plays a really important part in our healing journey. But at the same time, we I find people are a little overly attached to those labels.
Yeah.
And it can put you in this box. And we're not a box.
Right.
We're like so much more, so much more. And the very fact that, yes, our soul is in this body, but the whole thing doesn't fit. It doesn't. And it's out doing things while we're here trying to be present. So it can get a little overwhelming, right? And I guess my whole point with that is, you know, we are so much more than the labels that we put on ourselves.
Yes.
And if we stopped worrying about that's something I noticed. So my kids are 24 and 20. And then my stepson is nearly 22. And one thing I've noticed with them is if I don't have a label, I'm not special. And I'm like, but don't you realize how special you are just being here?
Yeah.
And you can plant that seed all you want, but until they're ready to, water it, nurture it, and let it grow, it's just going to sit there.
Yeah.
And I think that's a message I would want to get out to any young people watching this. You're special just the way you are. You don't need a label to be anything other than who you are.
Yeah. 100%. I agree with you. And I've kind of had this interesting relationship with diagnoses because I, for a while, like completely rejected the idea that we should have diagnoses, i.e. labels in that way, until someone told me one time that it actually helped her understand what she was going through. And I get that. At the same time, let's use it as a learning tool and not use it as
Yes.
something we need to own as being us. It's not us.
Yes.
It's a thing
Yeah,
that helps us learn about ourselves. And in that way, we can transcend that diagnosis and not
exactly.
make it who we are. That's how I feel
Exactly.
about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can totally be down with that because some people they just meander their whole lives and they have no direction and no meaning and any of those kinds of things. But like you say, sometimes that label can point them in the right direction.
Mhm.
And even if they, incorporate it temporarily, I can see that. But what I was seeing with my children, especially with some of these identity movements that we're
Yeah.
seeing, it was very much like this is like I'm only special because I have this label, and
Yeah,
and it's kind of heartbreaking,
it is.
to think, and makes me hurt for my kids and for all the kids, and I just kind of hope that there's enough of them that I'm seeing that are still kind of trying to find value and meaning in traditional ways of being. How do I explain this? So, if people are following universal law, so the actual universal laws, like cause and effect and karma and gender and all of those things, there's so many of them, and I can never remember all of them off the top of my head. But if we're following those universal laws, we are actually going to live what has the appearance of more traditional lives,
Right.
with the nuclear family, with, the father out working and the mother home and those kinds of things. And I might get in a little trouble for this, but New wave feminism isn't doing anybody any favors. It's not doing men any favors, and it's not doing women any favors.
I happen to agree
Um,
with you.
and I don't say that because I am someone who lives a traditional lifestyle. I'm in a long-term relationship with someone who looks after the household while I get to play, really. I mean, yes, do I create an income from my business? Absolutely. But in reality, I get to play all day. I want to create this. I get to talk to people.
Right.
I get to do these fun things.
Right.
And I am incredibly grateful for that.
Right.
And not everyone has that space. But at the same time, I my husband loves YouTube. He loves to go down the rabbit holes and find the most strange and obscure things. And
Uh,
this, we watched this dating show, and these two people come to sit at a table. It's like speed dating from back in the day, you know? And they sit at a table, and there's this button in between them, and they can talk. And if they decide they don't like the other person, when the light turns red, they can hit it. I was blown away at how quickly people were rejecting each other without even giving the other one a chance. They were rejecting people based on appearance. There was one little gimmick they used where they blindfolded the participants so they couldn't see what the other person looked like. Well, one of the men, this was genius and horrible at the same time. He would hug the women, and the minute he found out they were a plus size women, he immediately would reject them as soon as that light turned red. And I thought, how terrible. He didn't even give them a chance. She could have the most amazing personality under there, and you would never know it because you didn't even have a conversation with her.
right.
And it breaks my heart to watch these young people say, the girls are saying boys are bad, the boys are saying girls are bad, and it's creating this culture of huge disconnect.
Yeah.
And when, there's a lot of us who are trying to find ways to connect,
Mhm.
to bring people back together, to
Yeah.
to to connect with people ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's a little worrying for the future. But then on the other side of it, because I find there's this huge divide in these Gen Z kids. They got that side that's kind of going in the direction of, being single and not having children and not knowing the joy of connection. And then
Right.
you have the other side that is going extreme, because they're a generation of extremes, I've
Oh,
noticed.
very much so.
I don't know how I got going on this, but
Yeah.
um, but you have the other side that is very traditional, very, we're going to get married and have children and the little homestead and the whole bit,
Yeah.
and I'm just kind of wondering, when are we going to be able to come back to the middle and
Yeah.
have that balance again?
Yeah, and it's like to me, it's like I love being a girl. So that's why the whole feminism, the big push movement thing, like whatever. I mean, if that's your thing, I'm not that's your thing, and that's cool. Is my I like being a girl. I like having a big, strong man that is bigger than me, stronger than me, and I feel like is protecting me. I like that. And if that's not for you, that's cool, but I don't see anything wrong with it. And I think that what you're kind of getting at is making friends with our humanness and accepting ourselves, who we are, how we are, and understanding that just because I like being a girl doesn't mean I have a problem with you being some kind of power CEO at this big, like Forbes, magazine type
Exactly.
of establishment. That's cool. I think it's great. We need all kinds of people in this world. That's
Yeah.
what makes things interesting. If we were
Yeah.
all exactly alike, how boring would life be? Truly. So I feel like
Exactly.
that's kind of where you might have been going with that conversation, and just being able to fall in love with ourselves exactly as we are and knowing that we are amazing and enough exactly how we are. And we don't need a label. or to fit into some kind of, you said universal laws. I would put it more of a societal dictates kind of thing, where
There's that too.
society says we've got to do this and do that for it to be the right thing to do. And to me, the right thing to do is what feels good to us. You know, that's the right thing to do, no
Yeah.
matter what
Yeah.
anybody says about it.
Yeah. Exactly. And yeah, there are like societal dictates that I go against all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that, like
Yeah.
I know for myself, when I left my first marriage, I became persona non grata to most of my family because, and not to put anybody's religion down, but this was their perspective coming at me was a good Christian woman doesn't leave her husband. Well, they didn't see the emotional and verbal abuse that I went through for
Right.
16 years. And I'm a big proponent of don't judge a book by its cover,
Yeah.
and honestly, joining the collective, like I have, that lesson's really been reinforced this last couple of weeks for me, meeting some new people. And you can't always tell how someone is really truly going to be based on a picture or based
That's right.
on something they say on the internet. And a lot of people still kind of just latch onto that and judge that way. And
Mhm.
I don't know, it just really bothers me that society is like that.
Yeah.
Take
Yeah.
a step back and get to know someone before you make any kind of judgments about them.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. We do need to talk to each other more and just allow for the conversation to happen, because you might be pleasantly surprised, you know?
Exactly.
And that's again
Exactly.
where we can get back to the label thing a little bit right there. Labeling someone as a this or that may make you think that they're fit under this. Like, okay, I'll use the label medium, right? When you say the word medium, and if I were to say I am a medium, which I am, you would have all these lists of expectations that fall under the umbrella of being a medium. Well, guess what?
Exactly.
Some of them or none of them or all of them may apply to me. You don't know that until you
Exactly.
have an actual conversation with me and find out
Hmm.
exactly what being a medium means to me, because it could be something very different than a whole Teresa Caputo scenario. You know what I mean? Which it is for me a totally different thing. So,
Yep.
I think we need to be
Absolutely.
mindful not to cast judgment about that as well, because I think people have so much more to offer than what their label states.
Exactly. Exactly. I sit here and say, yes, I'm an energetic healer, but that's just one piece of what I offer people. There's so much more to it. Um, we have lifetime of experience. Well, lifetimes of experience. Once you start healing those past lives too, you can start
Yeah.
calling those skills in.
Yes.
And it we forget. We forget that we are all human, that we all put our pants on one leg at a time, like your mom used to say when you were a kid.
Yeah.
And the only way I think that we're going to get through this crazy division is to have more people making connections.
Yeah. Yeah. And sending love and light, keeping ourselves in a high frequency is a huge thing. And I've
Yeah.
some people feel like that does not really have that big of an impact, but I'm here to tell you that has more impact than you will ever know. Ever
Yep.
know. I mean, I've heard some quantum
Absolutely.
physicists and stuff like that that are big in the YouTube scene. I can't, like Joe Dispenza is the one that comes to mind right
Hmm.
now. How one
Yeah.
person at that high frequency can shift the frequency of so many. I can't remember the number right now off the top of my head, but it's an enormous amount of people that can be shifted by just one person maintaining that high vibration.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There was a study, and I don't remember where it was done or any of that, but there was this group of monks, and they would meditate on peace for this particular city. And the result of that was the crime rate went down dramatically as a
Yeah.
result of them meditating on peace for that. Um, it was very interesting because there's this group that I follow called the 144K, and this gentleman he calls himself the Unknown Light Warrior, and he leads the group through these absolutely beautiful cosmic meditations where they help release the negative energies that are, working here on Earth and things like that. And they did one particular meditation, and that same weekend, some friends and I were doing some work, actually quite literally on some things in the center of the earth. And we noticed within 24 hours that the temperatures dropped drastically on the surface after we all
Wow.
did that work. Yeah.
And how many of
Yeah.
y'all were doing that?
So that particular group, there's thousands of people. But myself and the people that I was working with, there was only three of us.
Wow. That's
But
how
it
powerful we are. It's amazing.
it absolutely is. It absolutely is. And to know that just a couple of people can affect something so much just from having loving intentions. Because as we were working, I work with this group of people. Once in a while we'll get together on like new moons or full moons and do a healing, whatever we feel called. It might be on ourselves, it might be on something to do with the earth, it might be on something, beyond that. It just depends what we're feeling called to work with. And there were many times where, we would watch the effects happen. I can't remember uh, any of the examples off the top of my head because it never seems to happen that way. But there was one instance where we found these energetic cables that ran from Alaska all the way down the West Coast, and all the way down past South America. And we started pulling them up. And it was within a few weeks that we noticed a big shift in a lot of people in Hollywood changing their minds about their politics, speaking up about things that happened with the lockdowns and things like that, with the um, injections and things like that. I don't want your YouTube channel to get in trouble, so I'm being careful what I'm saying here.
Thank you. I noticed that I've been
Um,
hearing a lot of things about them dinging people for certain terms getting used.
yeah. But we noticed that after we released that energetic cable, a lot of these things started happening. And I think there was even a couple of earthquakes along the West Coast as well of the United States. And there was something else, and I can't remember off the top of my head what it was now. If it's important, I'm sure it'll come back. Oh, that's what it was. That because it was when Trump was still in office the first time. And we noticed as well that he was having some conversations with China
Mhm.
that weren't happening before. So it was very interesting to kind of watch the reproduction or the repercussions of that
Um,
happening. We've done some really, really interesting work on that kind of stuff over the years, and it always fascinates me to watch the physical catch up.
yeah. Yeah, it is amazing. That's so cool that y'all did that and you could see those things happen because of what you did. Did you journal about that so that you could like
I'm terrible at remembering to do that. I'll journal all day long about my feelings, but I never remember to write down my spiritual experiences, and I don't know why.
Oh, wow.
I don't know why. And it's okay. I remember them when I need to.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll come up with stories from things that happened to me when I started. Because when I started my journey, I started as a psychic medium. I thought I was going to be the next Teresa Caputo. Clearly, that's not the direction that I went, and that's okay.
Yeah,
It's not
absolutely.
platform mediumship is not for everybody, and I learned that very, very, very quickly early in my journey. And it wasn't that I had a trouble speaking in front of crowds or anything like that. I was like, this is kind of boring because it's the same thing over and over. To me, it was. I don't know
Right.
what it's like for other mediums. And I remember there was one incident in particular. So I'm standing on the stage and it's in a workshop, and the facilitator, he's like, okay, and he's just pumping me for information about this spirit. And I gave him, I don't know, 10 or 12 pieces. And finally the spirit was like, he knows who it is. Why is he pumping you? Like, the spirit was getting annoyed.
That's so funny.
And finally I just said, you know what? He's not giving me any more. But afterwards, I was like, you know what I should have said? I should have just said, you know who it is, and he doesn't want to tell you anymore because he's annoyed with you.
Right. Yeah, you should have said that. That would have been funny if you could have done that.
I wish I'd had the presence of mind at that point in my life to say
Yeah,
something like that. But I was new on the journey, and my confidence was not where it is now.
sure.
And so it really did. It was really one of those things that really kind of put me off platform mediumship. That, and just being part of the spiritualist church, because that's where I started. There was a lot of politics going on there that I was not down for.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, don't do
so a
well with
group of
that.
us just decided, yeah, a group of us decided, you know what, let's just start our own group. Let's just do our own thing. And so we broke away and started our own development group. And I ended up leaving that as well, not because I wasn't in good with the people or anything like that, but my life changed drastically when I left my first husband, and I moved even further away from where the group was being held. And I just didn't have the means to get there every week.
Mm.
So at that point, my spiritual development really became like a highly personal and very alone journey. Um, and a lot of people, I think, experience that. And part of that is why I became a healer and mentor, because I didn't have anyone
Yeah.
to help me on this journey. And it's hard enough, let alone, doing this journey, but doing it all alone for a very long time, it's hard. And that's why I want to help people, because I don't want them to have to go through what I went through.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is difficult. So you do have a lot to offer, and I love that. You're very diverse in in your knowledge and the things that you are able to help people with, and I think that's a beautiful thing. So if someone would love to have a guide like you to help them through a lot of this craziness that and it's a little frightening. It really is a little frightening when you're first beginning your journey and you're going through some of this stuff. What are your offers specifically, and then how do they get in touch with you?
So I joke I'm the Jill of all spiritual trades because I do a little bit of everything. But I do help people through, like, tarot reading, obviously, past life. I do mine a little different than most people. A lot of people will do like regressions and things like that. But myself, what I do is I actually channel your story for you. And as I'm doing that, we record that and set the intention that that frequency goes with you, and you can listen to it over and over to
That's
keep
super.
peeling back the layers of that past life. I do Kundalini Reiki sessions with people, but I also teach Kundalini Reiki, because yes, it's great. You can come to me for a chakra cleanse, but guess what? You're more than capable of doing this for yourself. And so I want to empower people to be able to do that. So I teach
Yeah.
the Kundalini Reiki. And I also do have a couple of, more in-depth coaching practices. I call them spiritual healing boot camp, because we really dive into your healing. So I have 6 and 12 week packages that people can look at that way too. Just because sometimes a one-off session just isn't enough,
Yeah.
and sometimes you need some guidance for several weeks. And my goal with those sessions is, not only are we going to try and put you in touch with yourself a little bit more, but we're also going to help you open up your own spiritual and psychic abilities. I've also got a couple of resources. There's one I'm working on right now that I want to get out, because I'm so happy that I managed to do this. So I do have the energetic blueprint, which is a mini course people can purchase to help with their energetic hygiene, like we talked about earlier. But I'm also working on one to help people kind of unlock their inner healer. And the purpose of that course is you see so many of these courses out there where these practitioners go, "Oh, let me help you make more money."
Yes.
But in that process, they don't teach you the other side of being a healer, how to avoid burnout, how to set boundaries when you need to fire a client, because that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
And so that is a course that I am working on. That's going to be a self-study course when I'm finished with that, but I'm really excited to get that one out there. It still needs a little more work. And yeah, so that's kind of the basis of what I'm offering inside the Side Chicks group. I am going to be offering also, eventually, I'm not 100% there, a self-study, or sorry, not self-study, a Reiki share group. My brain is starting to slow down here. This Mercury retrograde was a lot. But I am going to be offering a Reiki share group for people who are, new or intermediate Reiki practitioners so they can get more practice in. And it doesn't matter what form of Reiki. And that's, another thing. If people want to be part of it, come take the Kundalini Reiki course and you can be part of it and share your gift and learn to grow your gift. You can find me lots of different places. Obviously on Facebook in the Side Chicks Collective. But also I'm on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram as Moon Over Pisces. And my website is moonoverpisces.ca. And it is .ca because I'm Canadian. So, and everything on my website is in Canadian funds. So all the Americans who are going to watch this, it's a little cheaper for you.
We do like that a
That's my
lot.
cheap stuff coming out.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much and you'll send me all your links and I'll get those in the description box below the video so that people can
Awesome.
reach you really quickly and easily with just a click. So thank you for being my guest today, Lisa. And I really appreciate you and your time and energy being shared with us today. It's been a great conversation and I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you. I'm so grateful for all of the connections that I'm making. So thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. And thank you everyone for joining us today on another episode of Spiritually Speaking. I have been forgetting to remind you that I do have a Spiritually Speaking Facebook group also, so I'll drop the link for that in the description box below the video as always. So it will be there for you as well. Thank you all one more time for being here with us today. Please like, share, and subscribe so we can get this helpful information out to more and more people that need to hear it because we are in a critical time on this planet right now where we really, really, truly need this information. So thank you for doing that. As always, I love you and I will see you on the next one.